Thanks, Monica. Just a few minutes ago, we told you about those mass killings of 6 college students in California. And it really seems like every month we start to tell you about another mass shooting or some sort of mass murder plot. We're joined now by Dr. Jay Singh, the CEO of the Global Institute of Forensic Research, to kind of talk about how we can learn from this situation, maybe help prevent the frequency of these things from continuing on and on and on. Thanks a lot for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
So as we're talking about the case in California, this young man wrote a manifesto. He posted videos on YouTube, social media entries as well. When we start to go through these, read through them, what kind of patterns do we see? What are some of the things we can identify from what we've learned?
In the end, Mike, one buzzword that continues to come up is Aspergers. So for those who don't know, Aspergers is what we call a pervasive developmental disorder. Okay. It's very different than something like, let's say, schizophrenia or a mood disorder like depression. Basically, its major characteristic is what can commonly be referred to as a sense of social awkwardness. And this comes from an inability to be able to recognize emotions in others the same way that others would be able to.
Now, one of the differences here in this case, we've heard, and as of recently, as the father put out the statement, he's been in counseling. He had talked to his therapist. This manifesto was mailed to his therapist. So it seems like people want to say that he wasn't taken care of by the system, but it seems like people were around him concerned about him.
Absolutely. What it seems like, Mike, is that he's been in therapy since about the age of 8 years old, so it's been quite some time.
Right.
Now, something that differentiates Asperger's syndrome from other major mental illnesses is that the research that we have available to us suggests that these individuals in this population are not more likely to be violent than the general population, and that the risk factors for violence in this group really are not very different than in individuals who are really just everyone else in our communities who don't suffer from this illness.
Now, is it possible to understand, now that he has unfortunately taken his own life as well, possible to understand, could there be something else at play here aside from just Asperger's? People want to take that because it's a very popular term lately. The Sandy Hook shooter was said also to have had Asperger's. Can we anyway find out, either from his writings or an autopsy, to find out, could there be something else at play?
I think there's really two elements, Mike, to think about here. The first is that when it comes to individuals who are somewhere on this autism spectrum, as they say, who are violent, number one is that 80% who are violent actually have some kind of a psychiatric comorbidity, meaning that they have another diagnosis on top of this. And the second is basically taking a look at the motivations of this young man. It seems that he's made himself quite clear in terms of, I always say that in terms of self-esteem, self-efficacy, that it's almost like an equation, where it's the difference between how you see yourself in real life and where you foresee yourself in the future, how you see your perfect self versus yourself right now. And the wider the distance between these two, the lower your self-esteem, the lower your self-efficacy. It seems like he's focused so much on this concept of his own manhood, masculinity, sexuality, in terms of what he perceived that he deserved versus what he was receiving, that his self-esteem and self-efficacy were quite low because of this.
It's still a sad story. I'm sorry we have to leave it there. I could talk about this for the rest of the morning.
Thank you for your
Dr.
time,
Jay Singh, we appreciate your time this morning. We will be right back.